Welcome to Punish for Protecting, live broadcast this evening. Do you bleed red or do you bleed blue? Tonight's episode, police officer exposes family court. Be sure to join us on our Punish for Protecting boot camp. You can register today at punished4beingaparent.com. That's punished, 4beingaparent.com. Go to our training section and get registered for our amazing 5-night-a-week boot camp classes online at zoom.us, where you can learn how to protect yourselves from family court, CPS, forced adoption, and foster care. Your families deserve their safety.
Just popped up on mine.
Okay, so this evening, I just want to welcome everyone for joining. And we have an amazing story this evening. On with me tonight, I have David Arndt, and I also have David Bebot, my friend, also a veteran. And wow, we have some story tonight. And this brave police officer, so whether you bleed red or bleed blue, whether you don't like police officers or you are blue all the way, you will love this man. I actually have several police officers that have reached out to me that right now we're doing a lot of behind the scenes work with them. And some of the things that I admire about the ones that I work with, well, sadly, they have suffered just as bad as anyone else, sometimes worse, because this system, when they go and they attack our officers, our true men in blue, men and women in blue, they really go for it out with them. They really take them down in horrendous ways. And we want to be able to expose that. So David A. is very brave tonight because he's actually forerunning for so many other officers that are planning to tell their stories and expose all the evidence that they have. See, once they're inside, they get to see all the real, true corruption that goes on behind the scenes. And that's what we're here to do, is to broadcast so that you, the viewers, can see what they go through. And I'm going to ask everybody to go ahead and definitely invite your friends list to this, invite everyone. This story will be aired on 5 different television stations: Delta TV, California, PA TV, Long Island, and we have several stations within the state of New York, like Panda TV and New Paltz, New York TV, and Channel 22. And eventually we're going on Channel 23, where I'm going to have my own show in the next, hopefully, month or so at the very most. Now, before I introduce you, I just want to say that the officers that I work with behind the scenes that have been put in this horrible mess. And it's interesting because I watched a video that was actually from a couple years ago where all these officers came into a house and they were actually very nice. Obviously, we've seen very bad situations where police have come in to take a child, ignoring all our rules, ignoring the Constitution, ignoring the laws, and just doing what they're told. Okay. And these officers in New Jersey, actually, the video is on my page, they were very nice. However, they were very wrong. So nice means nothing, but at least they were nice. They weren't putting a gun to their head. They weren't beating on them. There wasn't police brutality, although it's still brutal when you're stealing a child without a warrant, stealing a child without a court order. And one of the police officers said that several of us have had our children taken away under false allegations, and you just need to go through the process. And I sat there and I watched that and I thought about that. And I said, wow, here you are. And they're saying they're compassionate about this. They're merciful about this. They're upset that they have to be there to do this job, but just please do the process and let us take your child. And we have morals. We're not going to rip the child away from you, like we've seen many do in the past. We've seen many do. So they have that sense of humanness, at least. But at the same token, they've lived it themselves, and yet they're still there doing that job. And I marvel at the deception over people many times that would still think that this is the right thing to do. Now, you don't have a court order. It's unconstitutional. They're on your property without a warrant. so many factors in that. And all they had was a sheet of paper from CPS, Child Predator Services, saying to come, this is an emergency takeaway with, and it said it right on the paperwork, without a court order. Okay. We all know that that's wrong. We're not fools. We know that that's wrong. Your case though, how long, David, David A., how long have you been a police officer?
I was in law enforcement for about 15 years total.
15 years total. And you are now a former police officer, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so preceding the wonderful family court, what happened to get you from being a police officer, and you were a very respected police officer, to, and excuse me, let's let everybody know, I know it says it on here, but what state are we talking about?
Texas.
Texas. That's where you're a police officer, Texas. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What happened that you no longer?
Well, let me kind of go back and share a quick story of when I was in the academy that kind of will help put this into perspective, because I think that kind of really ties into kind of the end. You know, I remember when I went through the police academy, they had one of the instructors asked the whole entire class, and I think this was this kind of prepping brainwashing that they try and do to you. And he asked the class, how many of you, if you were to ever stop a ranking officer or any officer for that matter, and he was intoxicated, how many of you would take him to jail? And I was the only one out of the entire academy that raised my hand. Whether I was the only one that meant it or the other ones were too scared to do it, I was the only one that raised my hand. And so the instructor proceeded to try and make an example out of me and said, well, why would you ruin his career? Why would you think that that's okay? And I said, well, I wouldn't be ruining his career. That's a choice that he made. And I asked myself, I told him, I said, I had to ask myself when I went into law enforcement, where would I draw the line between professional courtesy, the thin blue line? And my answer to him was, if I could or would let an ordinary citizen go for something such as speeding or not using your turn signal or, you know, running a traffic light, you know, those are things that I've let people go for all the time and didn't write citations for, then I could or would let a police officer go for the same thing. But if I couldn't or wouldn't let a police officer go, DWI, domestic violence, assault, anything like that, then I can't and will not let a police officer go. And so he looked at me and he said, well, how do you know that that police officer didn't just go out to some horrific crime scene and see some 16-year-old girl's brains blown out because she killed herself or this or that? And I said, okay, let me ask you a question. And he said, what? And I said, have you ever arrested a doctor for DWI? He said, yeah, many of them. And I said, well, did you ask the question to the doctor? How many, did you just watch some kid die on your operating table that you couldn't save? Is that the reason why you're driving drunk? My point to him was, if we can't handle the stress of the job, you don't be drinking. You know, a doctor, a police officer, a firefighter, a teacher, a mother, a father, anybody that's committing an offense of DWI, it doesn't matter. If you're not exempt from it if you're a police officer. I maintained that idea as I was in my professional career, which kind of made it difficult for me at times because, you know, people knew that, at least in the law enforcement side, that I wasn't going to cover for him. And so they were careful around me in that regard, which I guess was good. Fast forwarding kind of toward the end of my career, I was put to test that very same thing. I was an officer in charge at this particular time, and my sergeant was off that night, and he called me, and he didn't say he was drunk. He didn't say he'd been drinking, but I could tell by the tone of his voice, by the way he was speaking to me over the phone, and by the very question that he was asking me. He said, I need you to follow me home. And I asked him, I said, why do I need to follow you home? What's wrong? And he said, I just need you to follow me home. And I said, have you been drinking? He said, I just need you to follow me home. And I said, well, I can't follow you home if you've been drinking. I said, if you're wanting me to follow you home because you're committing an offense, I can't do it. And if I catch you driving and I find you've been drinking, I will arrest you. And this is my sergeant. And I said, so, and I would do this for anybody, any of my friends. If they called me and said, hey, I need you to follow me home, I would say, stop where you're at, pull over, get in the passenger seat, take out the keys. I'll come get you. We'll get your car home. I'd rather have you stop on the side of the road. I'll come take you. And that's what I told him. And he hung up on me. And see, I didn't go look for him. I didn't know where he was at. It was a big county. And needless to say, that kind of blocked me. He later got promoted to lieutenant, and we pretty much blocked me from any promotions, anything like that. And I was kind of already thinking about getting out of law enforcement just because of, you know, things like that had gone on. I'll never forget when I left law enforcement, I had a guy, and the ministry that I'll talk about here in a minute, but I had a guy that brought into the ministry with me. But he told me he was a felon, and I had arrested him for felonies, for drug possession. I really like to find drugs as a police officer. But he told me, he said, you had a reputation as a deputy. And I said, oh, did I? I'm trying to figure out what this is. He goes, yeah, everybody knew that if you got stopped by you, that you would find the dope. They knew that you would find it. And I said, oh, really? Okay. And he goes, but we also knew that you wouldn't make up stuff to stop us. We also knew that you were going to be a man of your word. If you said you weren't going to take us to jail, you wouldn't do it. If you said that you would honest with us, you would. You had that reputation amongst felons that we knew we could trust you. We knew you'd take us to jail if you found dope, but we knew we could trust you because you were a man of your word. And I often talked to these people in the back of my squad car and shared the gospel with them and talked with, and talked with them many times and listened to them and tried to help them. And at this time that I was tested with the sergeant, I guess it was kind of God's way of saying he wanted me out anyways, because I ended up leaving law enforcement to begin a ministry of restoration. And in this process, we were sued. People tried to shut us down because what I did was I took people that, one particular story, I had an 18-year-old boy in the back of my squad car that he cried his heart out. He said when he was 8 years old, his mom introduced him to meth. And he goes, it's no excuse. The meth and the thefts that I do, he goes, are my fault. I've done them, but I don't know any other way, and nobody will help me. He goes, I'm addicted to this drug. My mom got me addicted to this drug, and nobody will give me a chance. And that broke my heart, and that's kind of the reason I left law enforcement. I said, you know what? We're not doing anything for these people. We're throwing them up, locking them up, and treating them like rats in a cage. It's horrible the way we treat people. It's inhumane, and so that's why I started this ministry of restoration, to try and help people.
That's absolutely awesome. So did they start to? I mean, I know you did decide to go into this ministry, which I think is phenomenal. But did the police do anything to you at the time, since you would not follow him home? Anything happen in that aspect? Because they were very much against, in other words, they're above the law. They're above the law. Now, and let me say something. Around the clock every day, every single day, I have crying mothers or fathers, okay, and children every single day. Now, I choose to not drink at all, but the last thing I would do if I did drink was get behind the wheel of a car and jeopardize the safety and lives of somebody out there. So right. If I'm in a position of authority, of some sort of authority, of a lawful authority, and I'm not responsible for my position, and I use it as a power trip, okay, or the people that I work with, the other advocates out there, if they're out there trying to save families and yet they're out there beating their children, I can no longer personally work alongside them. Or right. When I find out something about somebody, I'm going to look for a better family member, because I don't believe in this trading children off to counterfeit families like they're doing in this market of stealing and selling children that they do in the family court. But I'm going to look for people that are like-minded, so that we're responsible, ethical, there's integrity. You're telling me that they did not want you to know if there's an excuse for that cop drinking and driving. There's an excuse, but the rest of the world out there that are suffering, there's no excuse for. Or right. A mother or a father that protects their children, there's no excuse for that, for doing what's normal. There's no excuse for that. So that's basically what they were, in essence, what they were telling you.
Yeah, essentially, what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. A lot of times in law enforcement, there's that thin blue line, and there's really not a definition of when you cross it. When do you, obviously, if a police officer were to murder somebody, but then you're going to arrest them. But there's really no definition of when. And that's why I had to make the definition myself. Where does that line get crossed? And that's where I said, if I could let an ordinary citizen go, I would let a police officer go. If I can't, then I won't. And that's where this line is drawn. And that doesn't bode well, because they think that alcohol, drinking and driving is a relatively minor offense, when we know that it's not. It harms people out there every day. We don't want people out there on the streets. And I just couldn't with integrity. And I'll tell you another story. I never wrote seatbelt tickets as a police officer. And the reason I didn't write seatbelt tickets was the state law in Texas doesn't state that a police officer is exempt from wearing a seatbelt. It says we can speed under certain circumstances. It says we can run stoplights and stop signs under circumstances. it's statutorial, but nowhere does it say we can not wear a seatbelt. But for officer safety reasons, I often didn't wear a seatbelt consciously, and morally and ethically. I could not bring myself to a position to where I could write seatbelt tickets. I missed out on overtime because of the click it or ticket. I never worked a click it or ticket in my life because I could not live with this hypocritical. Yeah, I don't think I was perfect. I'm sure there was times when I sped when in a cop car, whether intentionally or not intentionally, but I tried. I tried to make sure that when I was driving, I was following the traffic laws that I expected everybody else to follow. And when you're a police officer, you don't care a lot of times. A lot of times it's, I can do what I want. I remember a rookie that stopped somebody that was with me. I'm sorry about my clock.
It's okay.
Getting a lot of noise. It goes off every hour. But they basically asked him why they stopped me, and he points to his badge, like, because of this right here. And he got in trouble by me for doing that because I said he wanted to write him a ticket, but I made him go up and apologize. And you just don't do things like that. It's not because of this that we have police officers. It's because of the people. That's what we're here for, to serve and to protect.
Absolutely. Thank you. Say that again. You're here to do what?
To serve and protect the people. That's what we're here for.
Has that gone away?
They have gone away.
But is that your oath? But is that your oath? I know it's gone away, but is that your oath? Is to serve and protect? It's to serve and protect. It can't be erased in our Constitution or your oath. It's to serve and protect the people. Okay.
Correct.
So now let's talk about these positions of power, people in positions of power, and why we're here today. And we're going to talk to David Bebop as well, my veteran friend. But I want people to know, because you're getting a lot of love and a lot of hearts from a lot of people here right now on social media. And this is important because we do honor our police officers that serve and protect. It's the ones that, and you just got done saying, if a police officer murders, sadly, we're seeing a lot of police officers murdering and getting away with it. We're seeing police officers raping women and getting away with it. Okay. There was just recently a case of the 18-year-old girl, and they completely got away with it. So it's very alarming and it's very concerning that they are above the law. But let's talk about somebody else that's above the law. And I know that they're frauds, and I know that it's a fake system, and I know that it's a for-profit private business, and it has a nerve to even call it family anything, but the family court, because that's why we're here today. You as an officer had to deal with the family court, and you're here today to expose that. What do you want to tell us about what you've been?
Well, most of my experience with the family court came after I was a police officer, but I do know I didn't deal with the family court so much on the police side of it, except I remember that video you alluded to in the beginning. I watched that, and I remember there was one instance where CPS did ask me to assist in child removal, and I wanted to see paperwork, and they didn't have anything that gave me an authority to be there. And they said, well, we know we don't have a court order. We just want them to hand the children over to us. And I said, well, if I'm there, they essentially feel entrapped to do that. And I can't, with a good conscience, go with you to be an intimidation, because my badge and my gun is going to make someone believe they have to turn their kids over to you. If you think that it's that dangerous and that dire, go get a judge's order. That's what you're mandated to do, which now I find out even that's a fraud. And I didn't realize that until I've gone through this whole hell myself.
It is an absolute fraud, and they're going in without any warrants. They're going in without a search warrant. You know this, but if a person has a criminal felony warrant, the police can't enter the house to get them without a search warrant attached to the criminal felony warrant. Yet they go in and they're stealing children. And they're doing it under the guise of it being protection, when we know that just that very act is detrimental and life-changing forever for all parties, especially the children involved.
Absolutely.
What's going on with your case right now?
Well, as I said a little bit ago, I went into the ministry, and I ended up, starting a ministry of helping people. And I ended up getting married while I was in the middle of this. I had been married before, and my ex-wife was not part of this ministry in terms of somebody that I had met that was part of the program. It was somebody that I had met, and she had a really good disguise. She said that she was God-fearing woman that, would follow me, and ended up getting married. And shortly after we got married, she was starting to have some issues that started to concern me in terms of, depression, anger, And I ended up leaving the ministry and ended up ultimately moving to Oklahoma because she got so depressed and so sick, I would say, that we moved here to try and get her help because Oklahoma is home to her. And so I ended up leaving everything that, I'd sold everything essentially and given up everything to begin this ministry. I was bunking in rooms with felons that I had put in jail because I believed in these guys so much. I thought that they deserved that chance. That I had given up this ministry that I had essentially built from the ground up. And we moved here to Oklahoma, and things got worse. Her anger got out of control. She began monitoring my Facebook and keeping me from talking to my parents. In fact, my mom and my aunt never met my youngest son until after he was a year old because she wouldn't let me talk to them. She wouldn't let me. She essentially excused me. I had to talk to them in secret. Every time I would talk to them, she wasn't around, and she would often question me, "Did you talk to your mom or aunt?" It was that type of. I was living as I felt like I was living a lie because I would lie to her. I had to lie to her in order to keep myself safe. And she started monitoring my Facebook and my phone calls. And so I started deleting stuff. At first, I didn't have anything to hide. But when she started reading my messages and looking at who I was talking to and starting arguments about people that she knew nothing about, why didn't you tell me so-and-so was getting married when she didn't know either of them because they weren't, they were friends from before we got married. I didn't, and it was just this. So I started deleting messages and I started lying. I'll admit I became a liar in the marriage, but domestic violence victims often become liars to protect themselves and their children.
So let's go back for a minute, because I know that there's a large audience watching this from different, men and women, mothers and fathers, different people. We've got advocates, We've got attorneys watching, we've got judges watching. And, people understand that. Wow, this is a man, and this is a man that's a former police officer. Mm-hmm. Is he really saying that he was abused by a woman? Is that really happening? Did that really happen? And that's another reason I wanted your story out there, because so many times, I don't believe the statistics on both sides. Right. I try to get as close to stats as I possibly can. The only stat we can actually say is convincing would be the stat of murder. Okay, but then there's also self-defense. But fathers don't report because of the stigma of shame, and mothers don't report because, as you can see all over this country, they're losing their children to an abuser. Okay. And now you're dealing with the same thing right now.
Sure. And
talk about that a little bit to people that are out there, because you're a man that's not going to hit a woman. Okay. So if you're having to defend yourself on something like that, it chips at your self-esteem. It brings you down. I understand the dynamics and the social science research and the psychology behind it, but you explain it in your words to people that are watching.
Sure. And I think the police officer mindset sunk in a little bit, because oftentimes we think of domestic abuse as fist fights, broken bones, black eyes, and stuff like that, which never happened. She was never really physical abusive with me. She would throw things at me. She would hit the walls around me. She would do everything she could to try get in my face and try and get me to hit her. She was trying to get me to hit her, and I wouldn't hit her. Hers was more controlling, demeaning, putting me down. And I'm just a soft, kind-hearted person that I let people walk on. I've done that all my life. And so that was, it was the, calling my family stupid and controlling me and telling me she's going to kill herself and telling me I don't love her and getting in my face and screaming at me and calling me a low-life piece of nothing and on all this kind of controlling techniques. And she would come close. She tried to take my phone forcefully from me before, and she would, there was kind of borderline. And so I guess the police inside of you tells you that this is not abuse. And so for a long time, it was hard for me to understand. But I got to the point where I started reaching out to some family and friends that I hadn't spoke with in a while. And I said, I don't know what to do. I said, I'm scared. I'm scared because she was getting worse and worse. And I was scared she was going to hurt my kids because she was going to snap. And I stood, and of course, my friends and family told me that they already knew because I'd been secluded. I didn't even come out, but they already knew based on things and the things she would post on Facebook about her, always pity poor her, pity party. And so I started, trying to figure out what to do. And people said, as I started opening up, people said, you're in a domestic abuse situation. You need to get out. You need to protect your children. And at first it was hard for me to believe. And so I reached out to DHS. I went to their office and I said, this is what's going on. And DHS said, you're in a domestic abuse situation. You need to do something about this. And I'm like, well. So I finally, after, a fairly substantial argument, I the next day got so concerned. And it was after I had gotten to work and she couldn't deal with our kids. She would call me at work. She was cussing and yelling, and she, over the phone our daughter was screaming and crying. And she said, I effing hate you to my daughter. And I knew that something had to be done. So this was March. And the next day, or it was the next day or the day after that, I came home and I got up early and I took the kids and I left. I had intended on going and finding an attorney, getting some help, doing something. I called domestic violence shelters because DHS said that I was a victim, but they all said, we don't help men. There's nothing we have out here for men. There's nothing. And I talked to an attorney, consulted an attorney, and he said, your story sounds horrific and horrifying based on the details you've told me. And he said, had you been a woman, and I don't know that he was true or inaccurate on this, because finding out talking to women victims of domestic violence are treated just as bad as I was. But he said, had you been a woman, your story might be believed with just your word, but you don't have any evidence to prove what you're saying. It's just what you're saying. And he said, you need to go back and record. And so she begged me to come back. And, I was only gone for a day, and I came back out and she promised me that she would change. But I went back with skepticism as well. And I began recording. I left recorders in the home. And just the things that I was hearing, the way she was screaming and yelling at the kids. And then I find out she's telling my sister that she wants to leave the kids at a park and abandon them, and that she wants to go get committed to she says, I'm effing nuts. Just commit me to a nut house. And I had tried to get her help. I had tried to get her counseling. She wouldn't do it. She threatened to kill herself. And I called the police department out there to come and, and they said, well, she doesn't. They basically kind of looked at me like, what are you calling us for? But they said, she doesn't have a plan, and so I couldn't make calls from my phone because she knew she would look on the phone to see who I was calling every day. So one day I was at work and I was at work and a cell phone from work on break. I went out to my car to the parking lot and I called the to the DHS hotline, thinking DHS is supposed to protect me and help me. And, they were concerned. They came out to our house and she accused me at first of calling DHS and I denied it. Then she started coming up with schemes why everybody else did. And then DHS said, we're going to come take you and the kids out of the house. We believe you're a victim. We believe that you're not safe. We believe that there's a danger that your wife could snap on you. And they took me and my children out of the home and put us in a hotel for a few days. And I had to start over essentially. And throughout this process, I ended up getting an attorney through legal aid, and they represented me for the first hearing. My ex-wife filed for the divorce, and we go into court. I filed for a protective order, and the judge denied it. But we go into the very first family court hearing, and this is before the judge. I'm assuming, I don't know. I'm assuming she knew nothing of domestic violence at this point, nothing that this was a DHS case. During this first hearing, because she filed for an emergency protective as well, because DHS wouldn't let her see the kids, only under supervised visits, which, now looking back, there's, even that is kind of a little hinky. I believe the kids were in danger, but I don't want to keep my kids from their mom, but I want mom to get help. And that's where I was at. I told DHS, I don't want to keep the kids from mom. I just want mom to get help. But DHS wouldn't allow me to bring the kids around her unsupervised. And so we get to court for the very first hearing, and the judge comes in and says, this is the matter of David A. and my ex, or actually my ex versus me, and their 3 kids, ages 3, 2, and 1. And she immediately stops, doesn't acknowledge me, but looks at my ex-wife and says, good God, I would have jumped off a bridge if I was you. Not knowing that I had already called the police because she threatened to kill herself, not knowing any of these facts, but she already made these biased and prejudicial statements. And then when I tried to bring up facts in court about, domestic violence, domestic abuse, she didn't want to hear it. She said, it's irrelevant. If you were so scared, you should have gone back, referring to the time I went back to her in March. You know, and on average, a domestic violence victim returns 7 to 9 times. I went back twice.
They not only return, they stay.
Yeah, exactly. And I went back twice.
Right.
And I went back once after that because everybody quit on me, which is I'll get into a little bit later. But, you know, at that point, I was just like, I was shocked that the judge could even say that my kids were worth killing yourself over, you know, and I knew that I was going to get nowhere. And that court ended with the judge awarding temporary custody, 50-50, when my ex had to be supervised at all times by her grandma, which in that DHS report that I sent you, one of the text messages that I tried to present in court was where my ex was saying that Kinley, our daughter, was being so bad that she was spanking her a million times, and that grandma got mad that she was there watching this, and she told grandma, said, just move, I'll take care of her. And she said, no, you're the effing reason she acts this way. You come over here to my house and you spoil her. And her grandma threatened to leave, and she said, good, get the F out of my house. And so it was a text message that grandma was there witnessing the abuse, the physical abuse of spanking a child a million times, who is at the time that text message was sent, I don't think she turned 3 yet. You know, and you know, because she's trying to change her diaper and she doesn't want to go to bed, and she's kicking her, you know, basically, you know, kids do that when you change their diapers. Sometimes they'll kick you, and they'll, you know, fussy, and, you know, but the judge said that she didn't want to see that text message, said that it was irrelevant, said that, you know, blamed me for being a victim. And, you know, we left that court that day with, you know, the judge she had to be supervised, and I had no restrictions, zero, none, because DHS tried to testify against the mother, but they wouldn't allow her because of hearsay, because this was now in family court. Juvenile court, hearsay is allowed, which is not a court at all. They can allow hearsay, but because the investigation was going on in family court, they wouldn't allow DHS to testify in the investigation because it was still ongoing. And so I still being concerned about my children, that my attorney ended up leaving. My attorney shortly thereafter ended up quitting on me and told me he worked for Legal Aid, which is a service for indigent people of domestic violence generally, at least in this state. And he said he was finding other employment. And I asked about another attorney through Legal Aid, and he said, no, they don't have anybody else. And so now I'm left without an attorney. And it was not too long after that DHS turned around and filed charges on me. It was probably 2 months into the investigation that DHS files charges on me for protecting children.
Let me touch on some of these things because I do this so often. Because I've done this for so long. I deal with so many cases. At the end of the day, they're not there to help you. They're not there to help anybody. They're not there to help children. So first they seem like they're going to help you. Then they go and they attack you. They're just there to make money and destroy everybody involved. Yep. And it's really sickening. And so now, you know, I did find that there are some shelters for men. I did a lot of research on that too, but I do know that there have never been for eons. But it's dangerous if there were shelters for men. It's dangerous when you have children, because just women that go to these shelters, they think they're going to get protection. They get their children taken right away. Their kids are taken, and then they don't get them back. And so the same thing would have happened to you had the judge put the children in your care. But they don't believe anyone because of I can't even say it's because of people who do all the false allegations. That's not why. They just don't care. This is not a business to protect you, to protect anybody, especially not to protect children. So, but I'm so happy that you've told this right now, and how important it is for people to understand, you know, that they're not alone, and that this is happening to. I mean, what did you see as a police officer? You're talking from Texas and now Oklahoma.
Well, you know, I'll talk about my experience as a police officer when it came to domestic violence. Is one thing I never completely understood is why victims returned, why victims stayed. And I was sympathetic with it. I tried to be, at least, but I never completely understood it. I think that's why God's allowed me to be in this position a little bit. But I understand now why victims return, why victims stay, is because we would rather endure the abuse and be able to protect and be with our kids all the time than to be able to be victimized by the family court system that is so treacherous to us. And that's what's happened to me. I almost regret making that phone call because it has ruined my life. It was one call that I made to protect my kids, and now they're trying to throw me in jail. And it's horrific.
Well, we have a lot of evidence that you sent me, and we're going to go ahead and play it. And I also know that David's going to show a poster board. Why don't you go ahead, David, and show that poster board and talk about what you guys did yesterday while I look up this one audio clipping so everybody can hear it. Yes, this is Oklahoma. The beginning story is from Texas, though, if you want to go back and watch it. I'm going to try to answer some stuff I see here in chat. Don asked to ask questions, but you have to put them in chat so I can try to ask them. And I'm going to turn it over to David Bevo right now.
Yeah. Yesterday we've been working on the remonstrance that Kirk's Law Corner is doing. I encourage people to check. Let me back up a second. Hey, listen, if you're watching us, roaches hate light. We want to shine light on these evil roaches, the judicial terrorism system. So I'm asking you, please tag all your friends right now, any groups that you're in right now, share this with them, because like Gandhi said, this is the most power we got, is to expose them. If you haven't checked out the Yellow Vest movement in France that's going on right now, they've been able to overturn a lot of stuff that's been going on with the tyranny they're facing in government. We may have to call on the French to come help us out like they did a few years after 1776 at the rate this is going. But we're doing everything we can to end this. We don't want to see David end up in jail tomorrow at 1:30 Central Time. We've put the remonstrance out to, this is the Speaker of the House in Oklahoma right here. We got a few minutes of his ear yesterday, Charles McCall. But what we found out was very interesting yesterday. We've got foxes guarding a hen house. So how good do you think that's going to work out when you got foxes guarding a hen house? Well, you think they're going to eat the hens, do you? Well, let me tell you something. Yesterday, we talked to one person there trying to find out which offices we need to go to first. And before we got to the other office, they're already making phone calls, and those bar members are coming out. And BAR stands for British Account Registry. You can Google it for yourself. We encourage you to do that. Go find out yourself. But so we had one guy try to cut us off. We're working on doing it. We have a right to address our grievances with government. We're supposed to live in a constitutional republic. Most people in the military don't know what that is. Most police officers do not know what that is, what a constitutional republic is. That means that the people have the power to limit government, and that's what our constitutional republic is supposed to be about. But most people have never even read that oath, office, the U.S. Constitution, that you can go Google, which they change. We found them giving out the Constitution, U.S. Constitution, at there at the state capitol, but as David found out, it's not the original U.S. Constitution. They've changed it. We're sure that's out there by the bar, and Chris Howitz is also doing the remonstrance, teaching people how to do it. It's got the annulment clause going on. That's what they tried to get Trump on, and they also got a couple of his lawyers in trouble because they weren't signed up as foreign agents in America as foreign agents because they're American Bar Association members. I challenge you to go Google that about them getting in trouble with Trump, whether you're a Trump fan or not. That's not my point. I could care less because I think all of them are guilty for the most part. So, and this has been going on for decades. So please, I challenge you to check that out for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Don't take David's word for anything he's saying, because we really got to drain the swamp of this deep state bar, because it's basically a pyramid, because if you think about it, watching them, yeah, I like that, drain the sewage. Let me tell you something. Yeah, drain the sewage. Please help us drain the sewage, because, I got to thinking on the way back after hitting all those representatives yesterday with the remonstrance, we served them, got it filed at the Supreme Court house here in Oklahoma. This morning we went down and filed it down there, which is really interesting that David's got court tomorrow, because there was nobody in the clerk's office, but it took them how long to file your remonstrance?
21 minutes and 20 seconds.
21 minutes, because when the lady came back, she said you had to take it to the judge because they don't know how to file this. It hasn't been done over 100 years. So we understand they don't understand this stuff, but at the same time, we've got the clerk down there, and I've been a witness for Dave and signed affidavits in regards of all this stuff going on, because I've seen the paperwork he's talking about. I've heard the recordings, and anyhow, but the first lady we asked, we were trying to find out where to file at the clerk's office at the state capitol of Oklahoma. And before we could get a chance to talk to him, we're getting ready to walk in the door, and there's a the guy has a desk right in front of the door, and then there's a lady to the side. And she's like trying to tell him to stop, and I'm like, oh no, I'm going to cut them off at the pass. I know they're trying to cut us off at the pass. Next thing we know, we have an Oklahoma Bar Association. Remember, they like to try to act like they're better than the American Bar Association, all part of the same club. I don't care what you say. And I said, look, no, we're working on excluding the bar members because that's who we got a big beef with. And so I got him to leave. And fortunately, Charles McCall came out and we had his ear for about 10 or 15 minutes. He seemed genuinely and good. He's not a bar member. A lot of these representatives are bar members. And I challenge you to, prove me wrong, but the U.S. Constitution says that an attorney can only hold one office. And I don't understand why we're having foreign agents protecting these people. I mean, can you imagine? I think there's a gang called M22 or something like that. Could you imagine if every time you went to talk to your representative, you had to go through the gang members first to talk to these representatives? Well, that's what we're dealing with. And when I was thinking on the way home, hey, listen, honestly, think about this. We got these bar members in every branch of our government, but do you have Congress in every branch of government? Do you have the House in every branch of government? Do you have, the executive branch all over in the courts? Do you have the congressmen and senators all over in the courts? That's what I'm getting at. So we've got a pyramid going on with the American Bar Association and attorneys corrupting everything in our government. This has been going on for decades. And, if they're willing to do, like I told David, he's lucky because Francesca and I know a lot of people that's been in David's situation that have had their kids taken away from them. And, I've been a victim of domestic violence, and I was willing to drop that in court myself, as long as my ex-wife would stop coming over to my house and breaking windows. Had the police called on her numerous times, but she's there in her prison guard uniform, and it's a good old boys and girls club. I felt the vibes change in court when she wore that into court with a top bishop in the Mormon church here in Oklahoma. Wow, I couldn't believe it. Talking about a black sheep in white clothing, but actually he was wearing a black robe. But it's just crazy what's going on. If these people are willing to abuse little innocent kids, you better believe they're willing to abuse us. And that's what we were talking about at the last week when David and I went down for a prison reform stuff here in Oklahoma, which even our new governor Stitt, he just signed 5 bills because he wants oversight. He realized there's a big, massive problem. We can expose the problem, and we got the solution with this grievance remonstrance. And there's a lot of people working on a lot of different angles because honestly, it's like I've heard Chris Hallett, Kurt Pendergrass, and other people in this movement say, it's like the American Bar Association is used the Declaration of Independence, all the complaints they had about the king as a checkoff list. And, I challenge you to go listen on YouTube. I like using the YouTube's version of the U.S. Declaration of Independence myself, and ask yourself, have they not, checked off all that stuff and doing all that stuff that they're complaining back in 1775, 1776? Are they not doing that to every one of us here in America? They got their own special little girls and boys club. They want you to make you think you could be able to sue them, but you can't. And they've upserted the U.S. Constitution. Prove me wrong. Go read it for yourself. Look up the original versions. In the Oklahoma original version of the Constitution, it says we have a right to petition remonstrance in our grievances with government. Power is inherited in the people, not the American Bar Association, not these unlawful lawyers, unconstitutional lawyers. Prove me wrong.
And David, I want to just say that I just got an email back from this Marilyn Stark, who's the House of Representative in my area, who I emailed earlier today, requesting a meeting about my petition of remonstrance. And she says, I'm sorry you feel you are being victimized by the judge in your case. I understand that you spoke with Speaker McCall's office yesterday and left your petition of remonstrance. I have consulted with our legal team. We have no authority over district judges. According to her, a House of Representatives says, I have no authority. You can file your complaint with the Court on Judiciary. I have. They dismiss them. They're bar members investigating bar members. It's as bad as a police officer investigating a police officer. You don't do it. Beyond that, I'm not sure I have much to offer you, but if you would still like to meet with me and Mr. Harder again, we could meet on Monday morning, March the 25th, 2019. So I will have a very nice but firm reply that I'm not asking, I'm demanding that we get a quorum together, the start account oversight. That's what the remonstrance does. It demands that something be done and investigations begin. And I'm also demanding articles of impeachment be enforced, because under the Constitution and the statutes of Oklahoma, our Congress can impeach.
And it's their sole authority to do it, not the judicial committee
or their sole authority.
These other places they tell you to call. They're always referring to the authority figure, the American Bar Association, that is all about this. You know, it says in the U.S. Declaration they created a multitude of offices and officers to harass the people and eat their substance. That's exactly what we're dealing with right now. Go ahead, Fran. I know you wanted to say something.
You're muted, Fran.
I'm muted. I'm sorry. On that note, I want to be able to play this recording. Can you set that up for me? And I also want to tell those that are watching, we are going after these judges. All we need is like 5 to 10 of you on per judge with the violations, turn them into criminal offenses to take before a grand jury. That is what we're doing in our boot camp. Register so you can join us. We're trying to get it so that we can actually bring like California, like different time zones together, and we're going to be setting up different times for that, because I do have a lot of people from the West Coast that want to join, and we're having a little bit of a time issue. So I'm working on that, so you guys are aware, but we will work it out. We are recording some of it, but it has to be kept private. So we prefer that.
Brad, can I add something to that?
Please do.
Hey, a really quick way to get like 5 or 6 people for each judge is to, like here in Oklahoma, it's oscn.net website you can go to. That has pictures of the judges on there too. I like taking.
What is it again? What is it
oscn.net is the website here for the judicial branch.
Oh yeah.
Court cases, but you could go on there, put your name, you put your judge's name in there, and you can do it in different states too. But put your judge's name in there and start looking up these other people that had to deal with the same judge. They often address or phone number of these other people, and start calling these people. You know, we're having meetings here at 6:30 in Oklahoma City for vetted people, because we're going after them. We're not putting up this tear anymore. You know, you don't.
Here in New York, I have around 40 already, because I had way more before, but I've been so out there. But I have already 40 on the Ulster County Family Court, McInty. I have others that have been coming to me regarding Savona and Mizell, but we have other, I have others of you. So if you come through me, I can pretty much set you to the right people that are going against their judge, because I deal with all the states. I'm going to play this video or this audio right now. And if David A. Would just kind of set that up real quick so they know what they're about to listen to.
Which one are you playing?
I'm going to play, let's see, it would be the first audio that you sent me, attorney threat.
Okay. So the first little bit of that's kind of summarizing a hearing. I had filed a couple of motions against my former attorney who had quit on me illegally, essentially. And so I had filed some motions, and of course my motions were denied by the judge. And so he's going over court minutes, and I'm fixing to go into a contempt hearing to expose his fraud. He altered court minutes to set me up for contempt of court. And he knows that I'm fixing to go testify to the fact that he altered court minutes, and he's fixing to tell me that he says, whether you know it or not, you're lying. And I said, no. And he tries to say he has a duty of candor to keep me from perjuring, but I'm not. And he tells me that if I go in there and I mention his name or Mr. Hawley, which is my ex's attorney, or the judge's name, he'll have no choice but to flush me down the river. And then he goes on in the recording to say, we have cameras, because one of my thing was this was added after I left the courthouse. He goes, we have cameras here. We know what time you left. I'm like, great, find them. And he also is like, I already spoke with the judge. I already spoke with my ex's attorney, and I already spoke with the bailiff. We all know you were sitting outside the courtroom. Thinking, oh, so you spoke with the judge when I wasn't there to set me up for contempt? That's ex parte communication.
That's unlawful, illegal.
But it's all in that recording.
And they do it all the time.
I'm going to go ahead and play this because it's 13 minutes. We want to be able to get the other recording in for everyone to see or to hear.
The first part of it, it's just you can fast forward a little bit into that if you're able to. The first part of it,
okay, I'll try.
like I said, it's kind of a recap what we're talking about. But I can tell you when it starts to get into the kind of the serious part.
Kind of hard with these things. It doesn't let you. It won't let me.
Okay.
It's not-
All right.
speak up.
I'll talk for a few minutes while it's kind of going through that. But you know that
Yeah, like I said, I'd have my youngest with me.
okay.
Well, the first week of October we could do. I won't have my kids at all that week.
How about the 3rd? At 11.
Okay.
Now I had just requested, he won't give me my files. He won't give me my attorney files. And so I did a motion to compel, and the judge said, well, I can get them, but I have to pay for them. So he's trying to charge me $250 to get my files, my attorney files that are due to me. I shouldn't have to pay for them, and it's actually illegal to charge me for them. So that's what we're talking about now. We're trying to set up a time for me to come there, and then it's all.
And by the way, Fran, here in Oklahoma, unlike New York where you're at, we have to pay for court reporters
and for the transcripts.
and the transcripts. Yep.
Here too. We have to pay for transcripts too.
Do you?
Mm.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh, they're thousands of dollars. If you think about all the cases in all the years, they're thousands
Yeah.
and thousands of dollars.
Yep.
Unless you're pro se or sui juris, and you can charge county. So now it's kicking into the sound.
Just so you know. You want me to read it to you?
Yeah. That's like that. Court orders. That's fine.
After appearance of Jeremy Jarman at the art pro se as well as arguments, the court enters the following ruling. Mr. Jarman is allowed and has withdrawn from the case. That motion denied. 2, regarding the motion to compel, the court denies an order compelling narrative statements. However, Mr. Art is ordered to appear in the office of Jeremy Jarman to obtain access to the files. You know where that is. Defendant Art is ordered to pay a reasonable fee of 15 cents per page for said copies and the time associated with their creation on 10/3/18 at 11.
Makes sense. Yeah.
All right.
You were saying.
Oh, just so you know, whether it is intentional or not, you are. I don't know if it really matters. This is my comment. Whether it was intentional or not, it's going to appear intentional, but you have lied in your motions about that whole idea of you leaving the courthouse. That is really, really bad on many levels. And I'm just going to tell you, I'm not going to be deranged about it or snide or anything, but you bring me or Hallie or anybody into that mess, and it's not going to go well for you.
So you're telling me that that you had told me that I was going to pay $1,500 a month before I left? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm telling you, you signed that document after it was all filled out.
No,
Nobody had
I
it.
did not.
Here's the rule. Lawyers cannot support perjury in a case. So I will have, if you force me to do it, I will have no choice but to just flush you down the river.
Did you hear that?
He said he'll flush you down the river.
I'm telling you what the rules say I am required to do. I have what's called a duty of candor to the court. Also,
He admitted it.
Here's some reference to it.
Hold on, I gotta pause it. He has a duty to the court.
He says, I have a duty of candor to the court to keep you from committing perjury.
To keep you from committing.
But he's the one committing perjury.
Right, right. Okay, let me play.
You don't hear me getting up there going, yeah, well, he did this, he did this. I'm trying to be nice like that.
We left that day. You told me. No, we left that day. You told me that I said I needed time to pay that. You said we're going to come up with something. Well, you can go ahead and leave. We'll come up with something reasonable. That $1,500 was not on those minutes when I left that courtroom.
I'm not going to debate. I'm going to tell you right now that you better have your ducks in a row on that thing. I'm going to tell you they got cameras here. And I know exactly when you left, and I know when I left, and I know when Mr. Hattie left.
Okay.
I've already talked to him. I talked to the judge. I talked to Taylor. You know, I remember you sitting up there on the bench.
I wasn't out there on the bench. I was in a room with you.
You, at the very end, were shuffling around out there right outside the courtroom door. So, I'm just telling you, you need to be really careful with that. I'm just telling you, you just need to avoid putting me in a position where I have to say, yeah, that's a full-faced lie. Okay?
It's not a lie.
You can, that's it.
It's not intentional because I know what was on the minutes. Because I know what we discussed on our left. I would not have agreed to $1,500 a month.
Where I have to say, he's the bad guy. Okay? Because I'll do it. I have to. I don't have a choice. I would rather avoid it. But if you make me do it, well, that's why you see my response is kind of like, I just deny everything and do it. Because I would rather than trashing you in there, I would rather just say, no, I'm not even going to respond. You're guilty. You see my point? I mean, I hope you understand how I'm trying to.
But I hope you understand, Jeremy, that nowhere mentioned $1,500 until that whole theory was sent to me.
I'm not saying you feel wrong.
No, it's not mentioned to me.
I can see that. But what I'm telling you is that I don't want to be put in a position where I have to.
Where are they circled on the minutes?
I wrote part of them, and even Hallie wrote another part. One of the circles on one of the other.
So he just admitted 2 people wrote on that minutes. He just admitted it.
I'm telling you, Jeremy,
You gave her a check that day.
yeah, we're talking about the $1,500. I knew that you came in there and told me that because we're not doing the cardiac litem, I'd have to pay $1,500 that day. And I said, okay, what about the rest of this?
And
It did have anything to do with the GAL.
This is like comparative statements. If you want to talk about what said, I'm perfectly okay with that. But I just don't. I guess I don't really understand what you mean by there. But besides,
Same thing as the court reporter thing.
if you believe what you believe, I'm just going to tell you that if you put me in that position, I'm going to have to say that is fabrication.
The reason the $1,500 had to be paid that day was why? Because the guardian ad litem was not being, because I had to pay $1,500 to the guardian ad litem.
$1,500 has nothing to do with
It does have anything to do with it because you came in there and you said because we're not doing the guardian ad litem, the judge is ordering that you're going to pay $1,500 today because we're not doing the guardian ad litem anymore, and I had to pay the $1,500 to the guardian ad litem.
He threatened him.
issues have
That's what's going on. He
Dude,
threatened him.
that's what you said.
It was a
Read the minute. The $1,500
This was right before I was going to testify against him. So that's intimidating me not to testify.
covert threat.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but I was having to pay the guardian ad litem $1,500 to meet with her because we weren't canceling that. The judge ordered that I would turn around instead of paying the guardian ad litem the $1,500, I would turn right around and pay her $1,500 that day.
Yes.
That's right. That's right. You're right.
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh, I'm right.
That day, and then I said, "What about the rest? I'm having to pay $1,500. I need some time to come up with some money for the rest of
And
this."
I went in and argued on your behalf to try to get
I was there.
ruled what's on that minute.
Not when I was there, it wasn't.
What's the word you said?
No, it was not. Because you added things to it in my presence, Jeremy. You added things after I signed it. You were writing things in on these minutes after I signed it.
I never add anything to a minute unless I have you, John Hancock, it, and Mr. Harold, too.
That was right there.
He had already signed off on it.
I don't think Chris didn't find it yet.
I'm telling you, that is not true.
I'm telling you, it is
That
true.
last portion, I was right about it. Well, that last portion, I don't know the last portion of it, we had to go already before the court because it was about the repayment of that. Yes, you were paying the GAL the $1,500. I thought it was a good idea. So that came up. You were ready to pay that. That's why that was to be paid that.
Then you went back.
Is there anything more on this one? Or should I show
The only thing that goes into the end is where you can hear me actually, my court-appointed public pretender telling him that my attorney just threatened me, and my public pretender says,
So we'd already
have those conversations with the judge, and he never mentioned before we went into testimony
I'm talking about the same
that he was telling the judge that I felt threatened, and then he gets called to the stand to testify against me. My former attorney, a violation of
This
attorney.
is on here right now?
Yeah, you're fixing to hear it.
All right, hang on. There it is. Don't threaten me. It's hard to hear this part.
Yeah, I'm not talking yet. You'll hear me in just a second.
Okay.
I'm finding my attorney.
And I also have records here from DHS admitting that you're safe and that you needed protection.
Mhm.
I'm looking at.
Okay, so he's taking me to another courtroom. I'm fixing to tell him.
Okay.
Told me that if I go in anywhere and I claim that they added those things fraudulent, then I'm gonna be in hot water.
Threats.
And
Covert.
that,
Covert
he's
threats.
already talked with Judge Hatfield, and he already talked with David Hawley, and they know that I was here, and they've got cameras and all this kind of crap. And he told me that if I go in there and do that, he's going, no, he doesn't talk to me. That's what he told me. I'm gonna tell you right now, he doesn't talk to you. That's what he told me. David Hawley. That's what he told me. He says they all remember me here. And then he threatened that if I do anything with that he was gonna bring legal action against me and just gonna throw me down the river. He hasn't talked to anyone about it.
He's gonna-
So I got me worried about going in here and defending myself. So just do what you need to do. Just get there and tell the truth. I'll go up there and tell the truth.
And that's pretty much the end. Now, let me just enlighten you a little bit about this public pretender. His bar license was suspended for 6 months for soliciting sex from one of his clients out of Canadian County, the county that he's representing me in. So he's not wanting to buck anything because he knows they gave him a favor by slapping him on the hand, giving him a deferred adjudication, and only losing his law license for 6 months. So he doesn't want to go in there and tell the judge that I was just threatened by my former attorney. He's just like, oh no, he didn't have those conversations with the judge.
Right. 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 Now you have here Canadian County.
Yep, Canadian County Clerk. I was trying to file a pauper's affidavit for my appeal, and she would not allow me to do it. She says that in the 23 years that she's been there, there's not a single judge in Canadian County that will give me a pauper's affidavit, and threatens to have me removed by deputies.
Okay, I'll go ahead and play that. And this is the reason why, well, all right, I'll play it.
All right.
And you'll be able to hear in here that I don't raise my voice to her. She raises her voice to me.
Mhm.
No. Carry this. But if you're gonna bring it in, you're gonna carry it.
So we're going into the clerk's office, and I speak to a guy originally that I had been there the Friday before, where they told me that they don't do pauper's affidavits for existing cases, only in new cases. And so I went and researched the law, and I couldn't find anything where it said that. In fact, I called 10 other counties in Oklahoma, and all but one of them said we allow pauper's affidavits for appeals. Only one said, no, we don't do them. Which I don't know how you can deny someone a constitutional right of a pauper's affidavit.
It's just a right, period. There's no,
Yeah.
there's no answer. I mean, that's dead wrong. Like
Mm.
everything else.
Right.
think you left this here Friday.
I was wondering where that was. I thought I had it with me afterwards. I was looking everywhere for it.
I found it by the computer.
Thank you. I was freaking out.
Like, you probably want this.
Yes. Okay. So I have a question. I was told on Friday that the pauper's affidavit can only be filed in a new case.
Yeah, it was only.
According to Title 28, fees and costs, Section G, it says that any case where the litigant claims to have a just action that by reason of poverty the litigant is unable to pay fees and costs, this section is finally able to employ counsel upon the filing of a form of pauper's affidavit or form of pauperous executed before the official. So I'm trying to figure out what rule is it, a rule, or where is that coming from? Because according to the statute I can read, it states. What? Give her one of those, buddy.
This is Murray Hershey.
All right.
We do not give out pauper's affidavits this is not a new case. You cannot get a pauper's affidavit to file an appeal.
Yes, thank you.
To file an appeal in an existing case.
But according to the statute, it doesn't say that.
You're taking part of the statute out of context.
Okay, well, I guess what I'm asking, and
And if you're practicing as your own attorney, then you can argue that fact all you want. But the fact of the matter is we do not give pauper's affidavits out to file an appeal.
okay, but I guess what I'm asking for is what rule or where are we referring that it says that it can't be added to a new, so that I know, because from what I can see.
I've been here 23 years.
Okay.
I've done this for 23 years. I know what all the statutes
I'm not
say.
saying you don't. I don't.
I'm saying we will not give you a pauper's affidavit for an appeal case.
Yes.
For an appeal case.
I understand what you're.
You've already filed your case. You already have an existing divorce case.
I didn't file the case.
You already have an existing divorce case. If
Right.
you want to appeal the court's ruling, it's upon you to pay the fines or the fees to do so. I cannot give you a pauper's affidavit by this court to waive those court fees because we are due those to prepare the record.
First of
Okay, but
all,
what I'm asking
is
where is the
they're
statute?
not
So
even
that's what I'm
supposed to
trying to
charge
find out
us.
to know, because
Couldn't hear you, Fran.
They're not even supposed to charge us.
the statute that I read doesn't state that.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm telling you, we do not give out pauper's affidavit, and there will be no judge in this court that would sign a pauper's affidavit allowing you to file an appeal with the Supreme Court through this court for free. It won't happen.
Don't that sound like obstruction
I'm
of
not trying to
justice?
be dirty. I'm just trying to get this. And if I have to go pawn everything I have to get $200, then I will do that because I'm trying to protect these babies. That's why I'm here.
This
But the
has
question
nothing
is-
to do with that. That has
I'm just going to pause for a quick second. You said the wrong thing when you said protect these babies, because that's when they get their rocks off. They love that you can't protect them, so they're definitely not going to help you now.
True.
And doesn't that sound like obstruction of justice there?
Absolutely, because it's in form of pauperous, which simply means in the form of poor,
Yep.
right? And you have the right to file, and it's literally a discriminatory action, and she's admitting to it right now.
I know.
So, is there more to this one?
This is fraud on the court, conspiracy of the court.
Big court anyway. But
Yeah.
anyhow,
nothing to do with us, sir.
I-
The fact of the matter is that we're required by state statute to collect $200 to prepare the record for appeal.
Right, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that what I'm seeing the state statute say doesn't indicate that. So I'm trying to figure out where.
It's not up to me to interpret anything for you.
but she just did. But she just did.
I know.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know. Exactly.
Y'all are hearing it for yourselves. You know, we're not just talking ourselves. You're hearing the recording of this event.
God.
Know what our standard operating procedure and practice is, and that's how this is. We do
So I am
not-
being refused a pauper's affidavit.
We don't have one to give you to
Oh, I
file.
have one.
That's not in this court.
It
That's
doesn't
the
matter. You
Supreme
can
Oh, no,
Court.
file
no, I
anything
have
you
one.
want in any court, period. You can literally file that you want a ham sandwich. If that's what you want to file, you can file it.
I
Anything,
know.
anything.
Who thinks she should be fired?
Who thinks she should be hung?
That's not ours. That's the Supreme Court's.
Who
District
thinks
Court.
she should be arrested? Her.
That's not our form.
Okay, but when I
We
was here,
don't have
okay,
it.
okay, but when I was in here the first day, I was told you all are a formless county. You don't provide forms.
We don't.
So it has to
Only
be
for
created.
small claims.
Right, so you
Not
don't have
children,
forms.
just small
No.
claims.
So it has
Not
to be-
for a pauper's affidavit.
So how would one create a pauper's affidavit
That's
on a
up
new
to you.
case?
We don't have a new case. Affidavit for you. Because it's not a new case. It's an existing case.
It makes me crazy.
The statute doesn't say existing or new.
That's up to you.
Well,
And I'm sorry, if you want to argue it,
I'm not trying to argue it. I'm trying to get the law that says that, because the statute that I read, it doesn't say that.
Statutes aren't
here
laws.
in this court, we have never, nor will we do a pauper's affidavit for an,
Okay, she's not going to argue it. She's not there to interpret it, but yet she is, and she's telling you the future of the court too. She knows the future. She knows everything. She's the all-seeing eye.
for an appeal.
But what a court does and what the law says a court can do are two different things. So I'm trying to figure out what statute is being,
I don't have to find the statute and tell you the statute.
but I'm showing you the statute that says otherwise.
I'm,
I'd be
sir,
going crazy.
I do not, and I will not have a pauper's affidavit to give you.
I have
We're
one.
in the middle of the case. That is not a pauper's affidavit.
It is a pauper's affidavit.
No, it isn't. If you read that, it's an affidavit in support of a motion to proceed in forma pauperis. This is from
It's the same thing.
the Supreme Court. That's their document.
You can use any template.
Now, the Supreme Court might allow you.
Oh, they will.
That's fine. But here in Canadian County, it's $200 to file for an appeal. I can't do your appeal for free.
I didn't say anybody has to do
But
my appeal
yes,
for free.
you are.
No,
Yes, you are.
all I'm saying is that we need to follow the law.
I am following the law.
No,
Okay,
you're not.
and that's what I'm asking for is some sort of, because the statute I'm reading
I'm
online.
not arguing with you anymore. If you'd like, I can have deputies escort you.
No, I'll leave. I'm just asking. I think I have that
told
right.
you everything I can tell you.
All right.
Contact an attorney, sir.
Contact the bar
But
member,
that's why I have
sir.
a pauper's affidavit. I can't afford an attorney.
Right.
I'm sorry.
So I'm going to
But
violate
I-
your rights because you can't afford one, and I'm going to trap you. So I'm going to violate the fact that you don't have the money for this.
Using a threat of force, the police to escort them out, but at the point of a gun. So
They did. Okay, hang on.
that's what she was just saying right before that.
I'm not.
Any more than I am.
Makes me crazy.
Okay. I just needed to hear you say you refused.
I didn't-
You have
I
refused.
cannot refuse to file.
John Ruffy said, "What is the
That I
name of the
don't-
criminal?"
Okay. All right. Come
I have
on.
to read this.
You can get down from there.
She's a judge too, huh?
All right. There you go.
Give me her phone number. I'll call and order a ham sandwich. Sorry. Oh my lord.
How are you?
Murphy said,
Good.
Maybe better off selling ham sandwiches.
Come on,
Right.
sissy.
She,
Did someone get in trouble?
No, they don't want to help me.
aw,
So we're gonna go do something else.
so, okay, we'll wrap that one. I don't want to show what you have to DHS, but I did read them, and because your children's names are on there. Yeah, Robert said, we can't even ask questions to the people we pay their salary. This crap's out of control. All right, so we're gonna wrap this. I want you to surmise what's going on right now so everybody knows. If you guys missed this from the beginning, please go back and watch this. This is a former police officer of Texas tells his story about what happened in Texas, and then how they, just how they think they're above the law. And now here in Oklahoma, exposing the judicial corruption, what's going on there. So we're really, 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 we give you major props for doing this today and coming forward with all of this. And we ask everybody to share this far and wide. Let's wrap up what's happening and what's happening right now. David A.
What's that?
Just to wrap it up for everybody to know what's happening now.
Well, we're just we'll see what happens tomorrow, I suppose, and hope for the best.
At 1:30 tomorrow, Canadian County Courthouse in El Reno. If you can be there Central Time, that's 1:30 Central Time. Please be there. Or if you know anybody that lives in the area or near that might be willing to come, just please invite them, because we need to expose this. The U.S. Constitution says that 2 more people call a judge out in open court for treason, they should be arrested and stuff. And we need people there. I challenge you to prove me wrong on that. Go read the U.S. Constitution yourself and check. Don't take my word for it. But we're ready to start arresting these judges. These don't do this to little kids. And I helped David out personally with some car repair money because of this stuff. And they still repossessed his car. And like you said, that was the difference between a car payment or a rent payment for a month or a mortgage payment. But they don't care. He needs money to take care of his family too. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. These people could have went to school with us, but they don't care. It's like the Bible says, the love of money is the root of all evil. There's nothing wrong with money, but the love of money, putting it above people, that's just wrong. And this has got to stop. There's still money out of a Social Security trust fund to do this. We already pay all these people, but they're just so full of greed, and they got a monopoly on our whole, all our branches of government. It's just pathetic. And we need your help at Canadian County tomorrow, 1:30 Central Time, El Reno. Please be there. We share this like crazy, because like Gandhi said, the only true power we got is to expose this tyranny and corruption.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you for telling this story today. Thank you, both Davids. You are in our prayers. God will prevail. God will prevail. You hang on to that. And everyone else, please register for boot camp every night, Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The more of you that come in, the more of you that get trained, the more of that you that unite with what we're doing, the quicker we can get this done. We are going after them, Title 18, Section 241 and 242, to have them arrested. We're a hardworking team of people from all over the nation. We're also going after 18 USC 3332 for grand jury indictments. We need you guys to join us so we can do this together. We need to take this system down. I do not see any other right way to have a justice system in America. We have to take the current one down. It is not just. We thank you for being here, and we will be praying for you, David. We will be trusting God for you tomorrow and for this whole thing. And everybody else, we appreciate you watching this. Please share this far and wide.
Any Army and police officer too.